It's been a couple of weeks, and this point in my training cycle, I think, is better started at the end.
Royal Mail.
So what brought me to this point, and what does this mean for my training? I want to cover the slight changes to my programming and routine, and see if we could pinpoint exactly where it all went wrong. So what was different this time around? Programming wise, the most obvious change is I went from 3 days a week to training 4 days a week. This was more for lifestyle reasons. I was in the gym a lot more. The breaks were getting a little bit shorter. I wanted to opt for more frequent, shorter workouts as opposed to one big workout covering all the big lifts. It was just becoming a little bit cumbersome. And doing 3 big lifts every single workout didn't leave much scope for time and energy around those workouts. And with the time and energy, it opened a few more doors for using more accessory works, which I was broaching the point of needing or at least craving. As narcissistic as I can be with some of my training principles, I do actually enjoy the gym. I do enjoy lifting weights. So adding those lifts for weak point training and neglected muscle groups, as well as using lifts that weren't so fully taxing as the big compound lifts, was a nice welcome change for myself. It was refreshing. Do I think this contributed to the injury? Don't think so. Really don't. Playing devil's advocate, I feel like it'd be ignorant of me at the very least to say it did nothing towards the injury, but with adding these exercises, I kept at a very low RPE. I did the usual thing of just slowly assimilating it into my routine without it being too taxing. Like I said, it was just enough to maybe broach a little bit newer bounds of soreness coming through my routine. And again, if anything, felt a lot fresher doing these shorter, less intensive workouts. So fast forwarding again to the home gym workout where it all happened. What was different on this day? The biggest thing, I forgot my gym bag. If you've been lifting for a while, you might have accrued yourself a few pieces of gear, and you get to the point where you have enough things that you just get a gym bag where you put all your bits in it that you're going to use for your workout. My one with all my shoes, my belts, my wraps, that was all left at my other gym where I usually keep my stuff. That in itself isn't such a big deal. Again, like I kind of briefly touched upon in my gear video, you don't need it. These things shouldn't be the reason you're lifting heavy. I managed to borrow a pair of my brother's shoes, which weren't even lifting shoes. They were more like the Metcons. They're a lot flatter. They're sturdy, but there's no raised heel, so it was slightly different form. I didn't have my knee sleeve, so I didn't have that same comfortable feedback. Using a different belt, which again, only slightly different, but enough to make it feel a bit odd. With that working up, it didn't really feel much of a difference. It took me a little bit of time to get used to it, but again, it wasn't much of a difference in terms of strength output. It just felt kind of uncomfortable, which I think was probably one of the biggest things that made a difference. So in spite of different shoes, different belt, some missing gear, in a new environment that I'm not really used to training. I've only trained at my brother's gym for a handful of times really, and also being near the top end of strength on this current training cycle. In spite of all that, I still kind of pushed through with my regular programming, where realistically I should have probably taken a step back and accounted for it either with more warm-ups, lower volume, low intensity, something to account for all these little tweaks. But at the end of the day, I'm only human. I did my best. I got to the point where I felt that 3 plate coming in, that 140 kilo squat, which is a standard I kind of hold myself to. I feel like anything below that starts to feel a little bit less like me. So I got really excited to kind of start broaching these numbers that I was a lot more comfortable with hitting on a regular basis. So I was really excited to hit that. So I think I really set myself to hit this number regardless of what happened. And that was my biggest sin. Greed. On the second rep of the set, nothing felt too bad again. I did a few warm-ups and everything felt okay again, if not a touch awkward, but nothing that didn't feel unaccounted for. On the second rep, you could see a little bit more of a grind I wasn't used to. I felt like it threw me off just a little bit, again, just enough to make me have to recalibrate mid-lift, which is not a position you necessarily want to be in, again, near the top end of your strength. But the weight felt okay, and again, I wanted to hit this number, so I pushed through. Same thing with the third rep, I started to feel it, just no pain yet, but again, I felt certain muscles working a little bit harder than they're probably used to. And again, just these slight changes near the top end of your strength make all the difference. And then it all kind of came to fruition on that last rep, where it just felt awful. I got near the bottom of the squat, and I just felt something kind of go. So before I talk about the consequences to my training, I want to talk about the lessons learned, just to sum them up. So as an extension from my last strap out gear, do you need gear? No, not necessarily. And I feel like that workout at least really showed it to myself. The strength felt fine. It felt good, the weight felt good. I felt like my body in itself was ready to lift that weight. Again, the difference was everything was slightly different and everything was slightly uncomfortable. And at the risk of belaboring the point, at that top end strength, this is the most I've lifted in a long time. So all the warm-ups felt fine, but when you get to that novel stimulus, that new weight that I haven't hit even during this cycle, that's when it all came to that one grinding rep that just threw me. When you're looking for maximum force output, you really want that consistency and that predictability, and I didn't really have that on that day. So when dealing with the higher intensities of your training cycle, just respect the subtleties. If a lot of things are different and you're not fully comfortable, maybe rethink what your training plan says. Also, set your safety pins. I think this played such a big part in making this not such a drastic injury. As soon as I felt my leg go just a little bit, I dumped the weight. Any sign of a muscle spasm or kind of clicking that you're not comfortable with, any sign of pain, it's quite easy to just deload and not put any excessive strain on an already struggling muscle group. It has been a couple days since the injury now. Managed to go back in the gym, try out my squats. I still feel some pressure there. Again, it's only subtle. Went up to about 50 kilos just to move my leg, and it started to feel it a bit tighter. But that being said, with a bit of active recovery and knowing I could still lift with load on the bar, it's really not that drastic of a one. So I'm going to give myself a couple weeks of building back with some rehabilitation type training, and I think I should be back on track, which should be good. And that last lesson is just don't get injured in the first place, because even though I'm quite happy it's only a possibly small time frame, it's still a couple weeks out that I could have been progressing, whereas now I have to be rehabilitating, which kind of sucks. But at the same time, it's been a while. I'm gonna count my blessings, and I'm gonna just enjoy training for what it is. My bench is still fine, and the deadlift isn't too hindered because it's only really near that kind of deep squat that tends to pull on it quite a lot. So I think a lot of progress can still happen outside of this little injury. So moving forward, I will still be documenting my progress. Again, like I said, I kind of wanted that fully transparent look. And as much as it feels a bit defeating to say, hey, it's been this many weeks and I'm already feeling some niggling injuries, I want to show my training with the ups, with the downs, with the failures and successes, that I'm gonna learn and probably relearn certain things that I should be adhering to. And this is a good wake-up call to myself to listen to the age-old adage of you gotta listen to your coach brain more so than your athlete brain sometimes. Other than that, here are the current numbers, just to run through how I'm going, and then I'll update you on my recovery 4 weeks in. It is what it is. Other than that, I hope you guys have a lovely day, and I'll see everyone later.